Did you know? The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time was heavily influenced by a failed attempt at remaking Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. Before work began on Super Mario 64, Nintendo experimented with a polygonal remake of Zelda 2 on Super Nintendo using the Super FX chip. Zelda series developer Yoshiaki Koizumi described the game in motion as a thin, polygon Link seen from the side and fighting with his sword. The emphasis on swordplay came from a desire to incorporate Chanbara-style sword fighting. Chanbara is a genre of film known as samurai cinema in the West, and is notorious for its sword-fighting action sequences. This desire was carried over to Ocarina of Time and embedded into both the gameplay and the story. Even the original reveal trailer for Zelda 64 showed just how fundamental sword fighting was to the game. There's one interesting thing to note about this early trailer. The knight Link is dueling is covered in the exact same texture used on Metal Mario in Super Mario 64. The trailer's background was bare, and Link was the only fleshed out character on screen, suggesting this trailer was from an extremely early stage in development. Ocarina of Time wasn't the only Zelda game to derive from a remake. One of the first ideas for a Zelda game on the Game Boy was a remake of Link to the Past. This idea, of course, evolved into The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening, and remnants of this can be seen in early promotional material for the game. A version of the game's map from a Nintendo Power preview looks very similar to A Link to the Past's overworld. What's also interesting is that Link's Awakening started out as an unofficial side project the developers were working on for fun. The desire to remake Zelda titles for the Game Boy wasn't limited to Nintendo's internal staff. In early 1999, Capcom developer and producer of Street Fighter II, Yoshiki Okamoto, proposed to Shigeru Miyamoto that Capcom should remake the original Legend of Zelda for Game Boy Color. Okamoto's plan was to remake the original Zelda so Capcom could get to grips with the series, and then move on to making an entirely new Zelda game for the Game Boy Color. Nintendo was interested in collaborating with Capcom, but many developers wanted to skip the remake and go straight to working on a new game. This eventually led to a trilogy of games called the Triforce Trilogy. The third game in the trilogy was cancelled due to the difficulty in implementing a password system between the three games, and the two remaining games were released as Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons. Oracle of Seasons retains some elements from the original proposed Zelda remake. The first dungeon in the game is reminiscent of the first dungeon in the original Legend of Zelda. The layouts are similar, and the exterior of both dungeons is a dead tree and a small island within a lake. Both dungeons also have Aquamentus as the main boss. Not to mention, several other bosses from the original Zelda also make appearances in Oracle of Seasons. Although it's not known if it was a remake or an additional entry, Nintendo experimented with bringing The Legend of Zelda: Four Swords to the Nintendo DS. The same team that made the original Four Swords was given the task of making a DS version, which developed over time and became Phantom Hourglass. The theme of remaking Zelda games on handhelds persisted even on the Nintendo 3DS. After Ocarina of Time 3D was released, Miyamoto mentioned he'd like to remake A Link to the Past for 3DS, but would rather create a new game inspired by it. Miyamoto has also mentioned the possibility of remaking The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask instead, possibly due to interest from fans. Miyamoto ended up asking series producer Eiji Aonuma to remake A Link to the Past for 3DS, but Aonuma wished to create a new Zelda game and convinced Miyamoto to go in that direction, leading to the development of The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. Although it's more of a port than a remake, the idea to make the Wind Waker in HD came from the developers playing around with the Zelda HD Experience tech demo from E3 2011. They used the same lighting from the demo on Link's Wind Waker model, and his appearance had such a strong impact that they started to do the same with the Wind Waker's environments as well. Series developer Satoru Takizawa has stated, "We took the various versions of Link from the Zelda HD Experience, Skyward Sword, and the Wind Waker and lined them up in the same setting. We used practically the same shader and brought out the same shading, and Link from the Wind Waker made an overwhelmingly strong impact. He exerted some kind of unnatural pressure. The Wind Waker's visuals were definitely impactful and reached a new audience." After the release of the GameCube version, several of the developers' wives became interested in the game, despite not being gamers themselves. They loved the game's art, and from that point onward, Eiji Onuma's wife would play the games he'd worked on. The Zelda series also has a few interesting audio quirks. One of these quirks can be found in the Wind Waker's audio for the Choo-Choo enemies. This sound is actually an argument between two Japanese men that's been sped up and played in reverse. The man at the start says, "At least I'm not balding," and the man near the end says, "And looking like you are, people will think you're a monster." Twilight Princess also has interesting dialogue quirks. If you consult the fortune teller in Hyrule Castletown called Fanati, sometimes she'll seem to chant gibberish, but is actually talking backwards. When she consults her crystal ball about Link's career, she says, says, "What am I talking about?" Similarly, when she predicts Link's love life, she says, "Wait, loading takes a while." Her name also has a hidden secret. It's comprised of the first 2 letters from the names of Furore, Nehru, and Din, the series' golden goddesses. The character Midna has the most voice acting in Twilight Princess, and was voiced by Japanese voice actress Akiko Komoto. Midna's on-screen dialogue is accompanied by a babble of scrambled pseudo-speech. What's even more interesting is that when unscrambled, her speech is actually English.
Have you made up your mind? I'll take you there with my power. What do you think happened to those who try to rule with sacred magic? I'll be watching. I guess you aren't stupid.
That's all for today, but don't forget to subscribe to Did You Know Gaming and follow Did You Know Gaming on Facebook and Twitter. Make sure you also check out didyouknowgaming.com, and if you like this video, check out the other ones. Don't even get minimum wage for this. What am I supposed to do, huh? What do you want me to eat? Fucking grapes?